Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. My name is Dan Aspel, I'm the Communications Manager here, and today I am joined by Dr Bubacarr Bah of the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences in Cape Town. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure for being here.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. And so this week you are here attending a workshop which specifically is approximation, sampling and compression in high-dimensional problems. Now, I've got all the difficult things to say out of the way so we can start relaxing and chatting to one another now. Tell me, how does your specialism relate to this workshop and how are you finding it?
So my background has been in compressed sensing, or you can also call it compressive sampling. So you can see sampling comes up there right away. So I did my PhD in this area, and most of the people that presented here in my community, and I am fairly aware of some of these works, and it was good to be here and just know what some of the new things they're working on. So it's my area. Although right now I'm looking at some more different problem, or reoriented a little bit to machine learning and data science, deep learning kind of theoretical questions. But we use some of the tools that we discuss here today in this space too. Yeah.
A lot of exciting topics hit on there. It's quite a dynamic and very sort of cutting edge kind of environment, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. So it must be very exciting to see so many different people.
Absolutely, yes.
It's kind of difficult to say, isn't it? Because obviously we're on day 4 out of 5 of this workshop and all of those connections are still happening. But I thought one thing that might be interesting for us to talk about is that you are part of AIMS, as I described earlier, the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. Yes. And as you pointed out to me just before we started recording, there are multiple HQs for AIMS and all across Africa, is that right?
Yes, kind of. So maybe we would have loved it to be more spread than it is now. But that's the goal, ultimately, to have it this network. So it's a network of centers of excellence for mathematical sciences. And we have one in South Africa, one in Rwanda, one in Ghana, one in Cameroon, and one in Senegal. And I think I had some rumor that a new one is going to be open in Cote d'Ivoire next year. Yes.
And for anyone listening to this podcast, they may very well be familiar with how the Newton Institute, for example, functions. Do all of these various centres operate in the same way? Do you host programmes and workshops, or is there research which goes on there throughout the year, regardless of having visitors?
They're quite similar. All the centres are similar in the sense that we run, so it's more like teaching. So we run a master's programme, a one-year taught master's program in all the centers in mathematical sciences. What we mean by mathematical sciences is not only people from maths, pure maths, can do this course. People who have any significant maths in their undergrad degree can come in and do this one-year master's in mathematical sciences. So we usually get students from physics, computer science, electrical engineering, statistics, and mathematics, of course. And the idea is to help develop their skills in these fields. So they're broad. This is a broad area of fields we're talking about. But then we try to come up with a set of skills that we think they need to be able to mostly go on to graduate school and do a PhD in physics, or a PhD in mathematics, or a PhD in computer science, afterwards. So all the centers offer this 1 year, and this is open to all Africans from any country to apply to. And if they're selected, they get free funding for 1 year, and including their travel to come to these centers.
Because that was going to be my next question. Yes. Is it for people based in the home nation of the particular centre? But obviously not. No,
it's from all over Africa.
Right. Yeah. So does that mean that, for example, you're based in Cape Town in South Africa? Does that mean that most of the people who are coming to that centre will be from Southern Africa? Or
no. So we have, so South Africa is a little peculiar in the sense that the academic calendar is a bit different from the rest of the other African countries. Most of the African countries use a calendar similar to the Northern Hemisphere, like the US and Europe, right? So we have the summer as a break.
Okay.
But the longer break in South Africa, it's in December. So their summer corresponds around December. So they end their year around December. And
is that because of the seasons?
Yes. So then it's like how do you get them to start there? They need to wait for another 6 months before these other people from the other parts of Africa to finish to get registered for this course. So they created a new cohort called the South African Intake, where they are allowed to start in January. So they overlap with the other people, but then they continue where those people finish. And then we are able to take in more South Africans. But yeah, this was something that was arranged because of the South African situation. But generally, we have students from over the place. And if you just knock out this number from the South African group, which is a smaller group, but still it's a significant number from South Africa. But the majority, for instance, would be Nigerians, which is, of course, obvious. You expect to have more Nigerians. So we have most of our students, I think, mainly coming mostly from Nigeria. And
is that because of the population of Nigeria?
Yeah, population-wise, I guess, number of universities compared to other African countries.
Yeah, interesting. And apart from the sort of the various logistical challenges of getting it all running, what's your role there in the South African Centre? Yeah,
so I mentioned that we have this master's 1 year taught master's program, but then as AIMS evolved, the idea was then how can we develop research around these centers. So in each AIM center, there was established what is called a research center. And then the researchers were hired. So I'm one of those researchers. And usually the AIMS funding model, we have a lot of support from different places. And so my position is called a chair. And this is funded by the Humboldt Foundation from Germany. So if you look up, you would see my title saying German Research Chair. I'm not from Germany, but this is because it's funded by it's kind of a German support to the AIMS project.
And that's not the origin of AIMS? It's from that particular German funding source? No.
So this is my chair, and what the Germans did was to support this project is to create chairs for each center in the network. Yeah. But also we have other centers we have other chairs that were supported by the Canadian government, for instance. They were called IDRC chairs, for instance, and the different South African government also supported a couple of chairs. They call them SACHI chairs, So we have different researchers funded from different sources.
So there's a lot of international interest and support in raising that up.
Absolutely.
So why do you think that? Why has that come? Why has there been such interest from?
So that's the way the model started. But I should have mentioned. Maybe you are not aware of this, or you should be aware that it has a strong link with Cambridge. Actually,
right.
The founder of AIMS is Neil Torok, who was a contemporary of the great physicist. How do you call him again? The great physicist who was here.
Oh, you're meaning we can cap this down a bit so I don't look quite so ignorant. Do you mean Stephen Hawking?
Stephen Hawking. So Stephen Hawking and Neil were contemporaries.
Yeah. Okay.
And Neil went on to become the director of the Perimeter Institute in Canada. He's I think from last year he's emeritus director, for instance.
Yeah.
So the idea was to help develop mathematical sciences in Africa.
Yeah.
And so the model was to get support from abroad, and mostly the support we also get is getting lecturers coming. So we don't have any permanent faculty. All our lecturers come from abroad, and we have a lot of support in the sense that we have Cambridge on board. He brought Cambridge because he was from Cambridge in those days, and Oxford came in to support this. I think Paris 6 or Paris 5, So these big universities that are supporting this, and they facilitate lecturers to come initially from this university, but now we have lecturers coming from all over the world, and they come in, and you have these 3-week slots where they come in and teach a course in 3 weeks and go back. And this is a way for us to get our students to be taught like the best people in the world. Yeah. And then also they end up getting connections, like they do at the end. They do a short 3 months project, and usually this is supervised from people also from all over the world. We invite people to submit short projects for our students. They supervise them, and some of them end up going to these top universities to do PhDs because of these interactions. The model is like that. Yeah,
it sounds, from an outsider's perspective, it sounds like it must be a really exciting thing to be part of, because let's say if you were part of the university here at Cambridge, very established, it's been here for 800 years, things are set in their ways to a certain degree. And yet if you have these various mathematical centres around Africa, and perhaps there hasn't been as much investment in providing infrastructure to train people as mathematicians, you've got this enormous population, a huge number of people who were, in the past perhaps, crying out for that kind of education, and you're going to make quick progress with a lot of brilliant minds.
Absolutely, yeah. One thing we have is like you talk to people who have come to teach, they are always impressed by the enthusiasm and the hunger for learning that our students have, and yeah, these are usually the best in Africa you can have, and but like you said, it's I think Neil deliberately thought about the idea of like universities being these big monsters that are very inflexible, right?
Yeah.
So with this model, we have a lot of flexibility, and we have been adapting. They have been adapting the program in different ways. Like for instance, we have the COPE program where we wanted to say, look, we want our graduates to be able to work in industry, for instance. They have a COPE program. Instead of just doing the 1 year, they have a 6 months where they can intern with a company, so that when they finish, they end up being able to work in company. So so if it was to go through a university process, it might take a year or two before actually it goes through all the processes and approved. But things are much easier to do in this kind of a setup. That's one advantage we have. Yeah.
It must. I'm curious, from your experience of working in this environment, what to you is the most inspiring thing that you get from it, or that you have done, or that you're doing currently?
So one thing opportunity I have is as a German researcher. It's not like a typical faculty with a lot of teaching load. So my teaching load is a bit less. In fact, in my contract it says I shouldn't teach more than 20% of my time. But also because it's a network, I can teach anywhere I want. So I go on. So I teach in Canada, in Cameroon, or teach in Ghana, or teach in South Africa, wherever I want to teach. And you go to teach, for instance, these courses, and you see how the students are enthusiastic about this. Especially, maybe it's just because I'm also working in an area which is quite very exciting recently, like this data science. So I go on most of the time I teach a course of introduction to data science, and students really love this course. You see, like everybody wants to do a project with you, and you don't have the time to do projects with everybody.
Sure.
But it's a nice feeling to be in the situation to be in, I think.
Yeah, and to get that overview of all these different centres, because the difference between Ghana and South Africa and Cameroon, it's enormous. I mean, these are hugely different countries. So you're travelling and seeing how a lot of different cultures are reacting to this opportunity, I guess, as well.
Yeah, so I think I also was talking to people about this, and I said one thing that probably Neil and some of the people who started these aims didn't probably consciously think about was that they have a real big, maybe unintended consequence of like bringing Africans from all over the world, from all over Africa to do this course. But they live together in one place for 1 year. So eventually people learn a lot of other people's cultures. So people get to understand each other a bit more. So it's more like building leadership, also building bridges between different countries and different people. So that's also a really good thing about the AIMS project.
I think. I mean, one thing that's perhaps ever so slightly delicate to say is that when you look at the workshops which we have here at the Newton Institute, they are open to and attract mathematicians from all over the world. Yet you don't see many Africans coming to them, and not as many as you should do proportionately, perhaps.
Correct.
So it seems as though the kind of work which you're doing is a move to repair that, perhaps, or if repair
there are a lot of
address that
factors that you can count. So there will be financial issue, which is the biggest problem.
Sure.
So African researchers and lecturers would love to come to these kind of meetings, but they don't have the means to do that. Most people in most African universities wouldn't have the means to come. Yeah. The other thing is they're not aware that sometimes it's not just funding. There's sometimes partial funding or even full funding you can get from these institutes to come here and spend some time.
Yeah.
And also, I think in a lot of other universities, the research is not well developed. People are looking at very old problems and probably not connected to what is contemporary research in this part of the world. So they find it a bit away from what they do. So there's all these factors, I think, that play in. And with AIMS, again, this is the good thing about AIMS, is like we are bringing people from all over the world who are really leaders in their area. So they expose students to these cutting edge areas, and we hope probably in the next few years we would have a lot of Africans ready to come to this kind of meetings and also be able to participate meaningfully. Maybe there will still be a finance barrier, but we would have a lot more people better prepared for this kind of meetings. Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating and really exciting for the future. So thank you for sharing that with me. To do this podcast/interview completely backwards, I thought I'd finish off by asking you, I didn't ask you at the beginning, tell me about your history with mathematics. So where did you grow up and how did you find a love for mathematics?
Okay, interesting. Well, so I liked mathematics since primary school. I grew up in the Gambia. I went to school there, did my undergrad there, and then was working at the university. So I don't know if you know the history about Gambia. It's like we didn't have a university until very recently. We had a university in 2020 actually.
Wow.
So before that, Gambians finish A-levels and then have to go abroad to study. So they come to the UK or they go to the US to do an undergrad. So when we finished A-levels, I finished my A-levels, there was no university at that time. The highest institution of learning was a teacher training college. So I decided to go do teacher training. And I taught for 2 years before I went to university actually.
Cool.
Then I did mathematics and physics at the university. When I finished, I taught for about was a graduate assistant teaching first-year courses and doing tutorials.
And where was the university?
University of the Gambia.
Okay, so by the time it had been built, you were ready to study.
By the time I finished teaching, so it was like, when I started college to do teacher training, the university started that year. So then when I finished, it was mandatory because my training was funded by government. It was mandatory to teach for at least 2 years before you leave the teaching field. So I went to teach for 2 years at secondary schools in Gambia. And then I went to university proper to do my undergrad. And when I finished, I was offered to stay on and do a graduate assistantship at the university because I did maths and physics. I was doing also some physics labs for the students and tutorials. And then I got a Commonwealth scholarship to come to Oxford to do a master's in 2007. When I finished my master's in 2008, I got an offer to do a PhD in Edinburgh. So I did 4 years in Edinburgh actually. So I have a lot of strong links with the UK.
Yeah.
So I studied here.
Quite a different climate to the Gambia, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
As beautiful as it is.
I liked Edinburgh, but the only but was the climate. Which is nice. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. Oh, that's a really fascinating story, and from the outside, that sounds like the appeal of your career so far must have been finding everything new. You're joining a new university, you're finding new students, people who perhaps would never had the opportunity to go to a higher centre before, and now based in Cape Town, you are meeting young new people all the time, brilliant young minds, I imagine. So it's it certainly sounds very exciting from the outside.
Absolutely. You always see, like I mentioned, there's a lot more you can do, but there's just limited resources that you have and time. But it's hopefully things would grow and will bring changes that we want in Africa. Yeah.
That's really exciting. Well, Dr Bubacarr Bah, thank you so much again for spending the time, and I look forward to hearing more from you and more about AIMS, and I hope anyone that listens to this is inspired to go and read lots about AIMS, and the website looks very clear and very good, so it's there waiting. All right, well, thank you again. And enjoy the rest of the workshop.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.